What happens when a beloved Hollywood star returns to a role that has touched the hearts of millions for nearly 3 decades? For Joan Cusack, that moment finally arrived during her appearance on The View. What began as a simple conversation about Toy Story 5 soon turned into something much more personal. A journey through memories, career milestones, and the surprising emotions that come with returning to a character fans never forgot. And before we get into the story, make sure to subscribe to the Star Narrator, like this video, and leave a comment below telling us your favorite Toy Story character. Your support helps us bring you more unforgettable celebrity stories and behind-the-scenes moments. As Joan Cusack stepped onto the stage, she was welcomed by warm applause from the audience. There was an immediate sense of excitement in the room. Fans knew they were about to hear from the actress who had given life to Jessie, one of the most beloved characters in the Toy Story universe. Sitting across from the panel, Joan appeared relaxed and cheerful. But there was also something thoughtful about her expression, as if she understood just how much this role meant to people. The conversation began with smiles and laughter, but it wasn't long before the focus turned to the question many fans had been waiting to hear answered. What was it like returning to Toy Story 5? Joy Behar leaned forward with a smile and brought the conversation directly to the subject everyone wanted to discuss. "So here we are again," she said, referring to the return of Jessie and the beloved Toy Story family. The audience applauded immediately. Joan laughed softly, clearly understanding the excitement. For years, fans had wondered whether they would ever see another chapter in the Toy Story story. The previous films had left such a powerful impact that many people believed the journey might be over. Yet somehow, the toys had found their way back. And so had Jessie. Joan explained that stepping back into the character felt surprisingly natural. It had been years since audiences last joined Woody, Buzz, and Jessie on a new adventure, but according to Joan, some connections never really disappear. The audience listened carefully. Many of them had grown up with these movies. Some had watched them as children. Others had later shared them with their own children. And now, another generation was preparing to experience the magic all over again. As the discussion continued, Joy Behar reflected on how rare it is for a character to remain so beloved after so many years. Joan nodded. There was a genuine appreciation in her voice as she talked about the fans who had continued supporting the franchise throughout the years. For a moment, the conversation felt less like a celebrity interview and more like a reunion. Not just for Joan, but for everyone who had ever connected with these characters. The audience seemed to feel it too. Some smiled as familiar memories were mentioned. Others simply listened, enjoying the warmth of the conversation. But as the interview moved forward, something interesting began to happen. The discussion slowly shifted away from Jessie herself. Instead, attention turned toward the woman behind the character. And that's when the interview became even more interesting. Joy Behar began asking about Joan's incredible career. Decades in Hollywood, countless memorable roles, a reputation for bringing warmth, humor, and authenticity to every performance. For many actors, a career like that would be difficult to summarize. But Joan approached the subject with the same humility she had shown throughout the interview. Rather than focusing on success, she spoke about experiences, the people she had worked with, the lessons she had learned, and the unexpected moments that had shaped her journey. The audience remained completely engaged. There was something refreshing about her honesty. In an industry often filled with headlines and controversy, Joan seemed comfortable simply being herself. That authenticity made every story feel more meaningful. As she reflected on different moments from her career, laughter occasionally filled the studio. Even Joy Behar couldn't help smiling at some of the memories being shared. It was clear that this wasn't just another promotional appearance. There was a genuine sense of appreciation in the room. Appreciation for a career that had entertained audiences for decades. An appreciation for a performer who had remained grounded despite years in the spotlight. But the interview was far from over. Because while fans were excited to hear about Toy Story 5, there was another side of the story still waiting to be explored. A side that had nothing to do with animation. Nothing to do with Hollywood success. And everything to do with the personal experiences that had shaped Joan Cusack into the person she is today. As the conversation continued, Joy Behar prepared to ask a question that would take the interview in a more reflective direction. The audience grew quiet. Joan's expression softened. And suddenly, it felt as though the discussion was about to move beyond movies altogether. What happened next would give viewers a deeper look at the person behind Jessie. and it would remind fans why Joan Cusack has remained one of Hollywood's most respected and beloved performers for so many years. The most heartfelt part of the interview was still ahead, and no one in the studio wanted to miss a single moment. As the applause slowly faded, the atmosphere inside the studio became a little quieter. The excitement surrounding Toy Story 5 was still there, but now the conversation was moving in a different direction. It was no longer just about a movie. It was about the journey behind it. Joan Cusack sat comfortably in her chair, listening carefully as Joy Behar reflected on how long audiences had been watching her on screen. For a moment, Joan smiled. It was the kind of smile that seemed to carry years of memories behind it. Not just memories of red carpets and movie premieres, but memories of hard work, unexpected opportunities, and the people who had helped shape her career. Joy Behar mentioned how many different generations had grown up watching Joan's performances. Some audience members nodded immediately. Others applauded, because it was true. Long before many fans knew her as Jessie from Toy Story, Joan had already built a remarkable career filled with unforgettable roles. Yet despite all those accomplishments, there was nothing flashy about the way she talked about them. There was no attempt to impress anyone. Instead, she spoke with the same warmth and honesty that had made audiences love her for years. That authenticity seemed to connect with everyone in the room. As the discussion continued, Joy Behar asked what it felt like knowing that so many people had such a strong emotional connection to Jessie. The question seemed simple, but it carried a lot of meaning, because Jessie wasn't just another animated character. For many fans, she represented friendship, courage, and belonging. Joan paused for a moment before answering. You could almost see her thinking about the years that had passed since she first stepped into the role. The audience listened carefully. There was something touching about hearing someone reflect on a character that had become part of so many childhood memories. And as Joan talked about the experience, it became clear that she never took that connection for granted. In fact, she seemed genuinely moved by it. The audience responded warmly. A few people even clapped before she had completely finished her thought. That reaction seemed to surprise her. And perhaps that was what made the moment feel so real. There was no script, no dramatic reveal, just an honest conversation between a performer and the people who had supported her work for decades. As the interview moved forward, Joy Behar shifted the focus toward Joan's life in Hollywood. The question wasn't about awards. It wasn't about fame. Instead, it was about longevity. How do you stay grounded after spending so many years in one of the most competitive industries in the world? The audience seemed just as curious as the hosts. Because while many careers rise and fall, Joan Cusack had managed to remain respected throughout every stage of her journey. Her answer reflected the same humility she had shown from the beginning. She spoke about appreciating opportunities when they came, about staying focused on the work itself, and about never losing sight of what truly mattered. The audience responded with another round of applause, not because the answer was dramatic, but because it felt sincere. And sincerity has a way of standing out, especially in Hollywood. As the conversation continued, several stories from different points in her career brought laughter to the studio. Joy Behar laughed along with the audience. At times, it felt less like an interview and more like a group of friends sharing memories. Yet underneath the laughter, there was also a sense of reflection, because every story seemed to remind people just how much time had passed. Movies had come and gone. Generations had changed. The entertainment industry had transformed completely. But somehow, Joan Cusack had remained a familiar face through it all. That realization seemed to resonate throughout the room. For many viewers, it wasn't just nostalgia. It was gratitude. Gratitude for the characters she had brought to life. Gratitude for the moments of laughter she had provided. And gratitude for the memories that still remained years later. As the interview approached its final stretch, the energy shifted once again. The conversation became slightly more thoughtful, more reflective. It felt as though everyone was beginning to understand that this wasn't simply a discussion about the future. It was also a celebration of the past. And perhaps that was why the audience remained so engaged. They weren't just hearing about another movie. They were witnessing someone look back on an extraordinary journey. A journey filled with challenges, successes, surprises, and lessons learned along the way. Joan's answers remained thoughtful. Joy Behar listened closely. The audience stayed completely focused. And for a few moments, the studio felt almost silent. Not because people were bored, but because they were genuinely interested in what she had to say next. Then came a question that seemed to change the mood once again. It wasn't about Toy Story. It wasn't about Hollywood. It was about what still motivates Joan Cusack after all these years. The audience leaned forward. Joy Behar waited for her answer. And as Joan began to reflect on that question, viewers could sense that one of the most meaningful moments of the entire interview was about to unfold. What she shared next would leave a lasting impression. And by the time the conversation finally came to an end, fans would have an even greater appreciation for the woman behind one of animation's most beloved characters. The final chapter of this story was about to begin, and it would leave audiences talking long after the cameras stopped rolling. The audience leaned forward as Joan Cusack considered the question. After spending decades in Hollywood, appearing in beloved films, and becoming the voice behind one of animation's most memorable characters, what still inspired her to keep going? For a moment, the studio felt unusually quiet. The laughter that had filled the room earlier seemed to fade into the background. Even Joy Behar appeared genuinely interested in what Joan would say next. And perhaps that was because everyone understood that this question wasn't really about movies. It was about purpose. It was about passion. And it was about finding reasons to keep creating after so many years in the spotlight. Joan's response was thoughtful. She spoke about the joy of storytelling and the excitement that comes with discovering something new in every project. There was no dramatic speech. No attempt to make the moment bigger than it was. Instead, there was honesty. And sometimes honesty can be more powerful than anything else. The audience responded with warm applause. Not because they had heard a shocking revelation, but because they had just witnessed something increasingly rare. A successful performer speaking openly about the work she loved without turning the conversation into a headline. As the interview moved closer to its conclusion, Joy Behar brought the discussion back to Toy Story and the excitement surrounding the next chapter. The audience immediately reacted. The mention of Toy Story 5 once again reminded everyone why they had been so eager to watch this interview in the first place. For years, fans had followed the adventures of Woody, Buzz, Jessie, and the rest of the gang. Many viewers had grown up alongside these characters. Others had introduced them to their children and grandchildren. Few movie franchises had managed to remain part of people's lives for so long. And now, another chapter was on the way. As Joan reflected on returning to Jessie, there was a sense of gratitude in her voice. She seemed fully aware of what the character meant to fans. And perhaps that understanding was one of the reasons audiences continued to connect with her. She wasn't simply returning to a role. She was returning to a character that had become part of millions of childhood memories. The audience responded with another round of applause. Some smiled. Others simply sat back and enjoyed the moment. Because sometimes the most meaningful interviews aren't built around controversy or confrontation. Sometimes they're built around appreciation. And that was exactly what this interview had become. As the final moments approached, Joy Behar thanked Joan for sharing her stories and memories with the audience. The conversation had started with excitement about Toy Story 5. But somewhere along the way, it had become a celebration of an entire career. A career filled with memorable performances, lasting friendships, and characters that audiences would never forget. The audience rose into one final round of applause. Joan smiled. Joy Behar smiled. And for a brief moment, the entire studio seemed united by a simple feeling. Gratitude. Gratitude for the stories. Gratitude for the memories. And gratitude for the performers who helped bring those stories to life. But the interview wasn't finished making an impact. Because almost as soon as the episode aired, viewers began sharing their reactions online. Fans posted clips from the conversation. Others shared their favorite Jessie moments from previous Toy Story films. Many viewers expressed excitement about seeing Joan Cusack return for another adventure. Across social media, one theme appeared again and again. People were happy to see her back. The interview quickly became a reminder of just how much affection audiences still had for both Joan Cusack and the world of Toy Story. Entertainment websites covered the appearance. Fans continued discussing their favorite moments. And anticipation for Toy Story 5 seemed stronger than ever. For some viewers, the interview brought back childhood memories. For others, it sparked excitement about introducing a new generation to these beloved characters. Either way, the conversation had clearly connected with people. And perhaps that was the biggest takeaway of all. In an entertainment world that moves faster every year, some stories continue to endure. Some characters continue to matter. And some performers continue to leave a lasting impact long after the cameras stop rolling. Joan Cusack's appearance on The View may have started as a discussion about a movie. but it ended as something much bigger. It became a reflection on a remarkable career, a beloved character, and the lasting connection between performers and audiences. And now we'd love to hear from you. Are you excited to see Jessie return in Toy Story 5? What is your favorite Joan Cusack role? And which Toy Story moment do you remember most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Star Narrator, and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest celebrity interviews, Hollywood stories, and unforgettable moments from the entertainment world. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.